Hi, today we're going to summarize Esperanza Rising Chapter 5, Las Guavas, which is the Spanish word for guavas, which is a small little fruit. And remember, if you haven't noticed what the names of the chapters are and how they are in common, then go back in the other chapters and look at the names and see if you can find what they all have in common. So remember, we start always talking about who the characters are in this chapter and where the chapter takes place, its setting. So in this chapter, we have Esperanza, who is the main character and we've met so far. She is the daughter. And Ramona, who is Esperanza's mother, and we see her called Mama a lot. Hortensia, who used to work for Papa, but now there is nothing left, and they are going to the USA, and they are good friends, and she is married to Alfonso. And Alfonso also worked for Papa and is also going to the US and is a great friend and married to Hortensia. And they have a son named Miguel, who Esperanza grew up with on their ranch. And then also in this chapter, on the train, there will be a poor peasant girl. And a peasant just means somebody that is really poor. Maybe they live on the streets and they're a beggar, or they have a very simple house and not a lot of money. And then there was also a woman named Carmen, who was also a poor peasant woman, and she sold eggs to make money to support her family. She had 8 kids. And the setting where this took place is first on a wagon ride to a train station, and then a train ride to the United States. So they were heading from Mexico and trying to get to the United States. So we don't know if they'll make it or not. And remember, this was in 1930, so it was almost 100 years ago. So that's why they were riding in wagons that were pulled by horses, because not everybody had a car back then, especially if you were poor. And that they are taking a train ride instead of a car ride or an airplane ride. They're taking a train to the United States. So what happened in this chapter? If you remember the last chapter, Tio Luis burned down the house. Well, we don't know that. We can infer that maybe he burned down the house because he threatened them that something bad would happen, and then the house burned down. And he then wanted to marry Mama, and Mama played a trick on him and said, yes, I will marry you. But it was a trick, and in the middle of the night, Mama, Esperanza, Hortensia, Miguel, and Alfonso escaped and ran away in the middle of the night, and that's where it left off. And so they got to their neighbor's house, who was in on the plan and had a wagon ready for them, and the wagon had a secret room, and Mama and Esperanza and Hortensia hid in the secret room here, and then they shut it, and then they put guavas on the top, those fruits. And then Miguel and Alfonso drove the wagon with the fruit on the top, and it made it look like they were going to go to the market to sell the fruit, which would be normal because they worked on the farm. So nobody would think that something tricky was going on. And so they decided to go to a train station that was far away, because if they went to the nearest train station, they thought maybe Tio Luis would find them, or somebody that worked for Tio Luis. So they went to a train station far, far away. And during that ride, Esperanza was really scared because it was dark and it was really hard to breathe in that secret area. And Hortensia made her feel better by telling her this, reminding her and telling her of the story a long time ago when Papa took her and Miguel on a really fancy train ride, because Miguel was brave one time when bandits came to the house and he distracted them with a mouse. And Papa knew that Miguel loved trains, so he took Miguel and Esperanza on a really fancy train ride. So it took them 2 days of riding in that, underneath that cart, to get to this train station. And when they got there, they went to the poor people train car. This was a train car that was dirty, it stunk, it just had hard wooden seats on it, and it was really crowded. And Esperanza did not, and it was full of peasants, which are poor people. And Esperanza did not trust the peasants. She thought that they might hurt them or steal stuff from them, so she was feeling really uncomfortable. And Esperanza told Mama that they needed to travel in the fancy train car, like she did with Papa. And Mama said, no, we're poor. This is all that we can afford. And Esperanza really didn't like it. And she was just looking down on everybody and being kind of snotty and spoiled. During the train ride, Esperanza took her doll out that she got from Papa, and a dirty peasant girl, they said, that had kind of dressed in rags and was all dirty, reached her hand out and said, Mona, Mona, which means doll or dolly, dolly in Spanish. And Esperanza jerked it away, and the little girl cried. And Mama apologized to the little girl's mother for Esperanza's bad behavior. And Esperanza wondered, why would Mama apologize to poor people? So she wasn't being very nice. Esperanza wasn't. Esperanza told Mama that she didn't want a poor, dirty little girl touching her doll. And Mama kind of pulled her aside and said, you are being really embarrassing to me and to all of us, and you're insulting or putting down the people that are all around us. And then Mama pulled out some yarn from her basket and had Esperanza hold on to it with her arms while Mama tied yarn around and made a little yarn doll. And then Mama gave the yarn doll to the little girl, and the little girl smiled. So think about how Mama and how Esperanza are responding to this challenge. How is Mama responding to this challenge of being poor and being on a train that's kind of dirty and gross and a long train ride? And how is Esperanza responding to this? Are they responding the same or different? Later on in the ride, Miguel was really excited, and he was talking to Esperanza about how much he was really looking forward to going to the United States. He really wanted to work on trains, and he said in the United States, the poorest man can become rich if he works hard enough. And so Miguel was planning on working really hard and changing his life, because he was just in Mexico, he would have been stuck just being a poor person. He could never become a rich person. And so he was looking forward to going to the United States. Later in the train ride, Carmen, a poor old woman, a peasant woman, got onto the train with a whole bunch of baskets of chicken and eggs. And she had 8 kids, and she sold those eggs to make money. And her and Mama started talking, and she said, well, I am a poor woman, but I am rich. I have my children, I have a garden with roses, and I have my faith and the memories of those who have gone before me. What more is there? So later on, at the end of this, I want you to be thinking about, what does that really mean? Esperanza whispered to Mama and said, you shouldn't be talking to peasants. And Mama, again, kind of pulled her aside and said, Esperanza, we are peasants. We are poor. We are like these people. But it doesn't seem like Esperanza's getting it, does it? Mama gave the chicken woman some pretty lace that she was making. And then in return, the poor woman gave Mama 2 chickens. So that was pretty impressive for her to share the things that earned her money. When Carmen, the chicken woman, got off, she went over to a poor beggar woman that was at the train station that they had stopped at, and she bent down and she gave her money. And the rich people that were all around just stood there and ignored that. They didn't even try to help anybody. And Miguel was watching this, and Miguel said, she has 8 children and sells eggs to survive. Yet when she can barely afford it, she gave your mother 2 hens and helped the crippled woman, the woman that was begging. The rich take care of the rich, and the poor take care of those who have less. And so look at this picture here. The poor people are often the most generous, is what this says. So Miguel was noticing something about how his life went and how the life of other people around him are going. And Esperanza did not understand why people needed to help poor people. She thought, why can't the poor people just go and help themselves? So Esperanza doesn't seem to really be getting what's going on, does she? So remember, when you read a book, you always want to be thinking about what's happening in your chapter. And in Esperanza, we need to think about the challenges in the chapter and how people responded. So what was a big challenge in this chapter? And maybe there's more than one challenge. You pick one challenge to talk about. What was the big challenge in this chapter? How did Mama respond to that challenge? How did Esperanza respond? Maybe it's a challenge that Miguel or somebody else faced. How did they respond to that challenge? So think about that. Think about even being on the train. How did Mama respond to being on the train? How did Esperanza respond to being on the train? It was pretty different. And then inference, let's try to make a guess about what's going on in the chapter. Do you think that Esperanza knows that she's poor? What do you think? And what evidence from the book supports your inference? And then we talked about that figurative language earlier, that it has a deeper meaning. So the Carmen the egg woman said, I am poor, but I am rich. I have my children, I have a garden with roses, and I have my faith in the memories of those who have gone before me. What more is there? So does Carmen, the poor chicken woman, does this mean that she has a lot of money, that she's really, really rich? Or does rich mean something else? Can it mean more than just money? Can you be rich with other things instead of money? So what do you think? So I hope you enjoyed this chapter, and we'll see about next chapter. Do they make it to the United States or not? I don't know. We'll have to read it and find out. Bye.